I grew up believing my mom wanted nothing but the best for me. Every time I thought about the future, I imagined her smiling, telling me that everything would work out. "One day, you'll go to college, and I'll make sure you never have to worry about money," she'd say. I held on to those words like a promise carved in stone. They became the foundation of my hopes, the reason I believed I could dream big even though life at home wasn't always perfect. I wasn't from a wealthy family, far from it, but I trusted that my mom had a plan for me. That trust felt unbreakable, like a safety net I could rely on. By the time I turned 18, that trust had become a quiet, constant fire inside me. I had worked hard in high school, staying late to study, skipping parties to focus on grades, all because I wanted to honor that promise she had made. College wasn't just a dream, it was a necessity, a ticket to a future where I could prove to myself, and maybe to her, that her investment in me had been worth it. I was excited, filled with hope, imagining myself walking across that graduation stage smiling, knowing that all the sacrifices and struggles had led to this one moment. But life has a way of shattering even the strongest illusions, and I didn't realize how fragile my trust in my mom really was. At first, the signs were subtle. I'd ask about the college fund my grandparents had left for me, money they specifically set aside to support my education, and my mom would dodge the question. She'd shift topics, make a joke, or sometimes get defensive. "Don't you trust me?" she'd snap, her voice sharp enough to sting. I tried to let it go. Maybe I was being paranoid. After all, she had always said she wanted the best for me. Maybe it really was nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was off. The more I pressed, the more anxious she seemed. I started noticing little patterns, like her pulling out her phone quickly when I walked into the room or whispering when she was on calls. Small things that I could have dismissed as coincidence, but after years of relying on my instincts, I knew better. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't ignore, a sense that something was being hidden from me. Then came the night that changed everything. My mom had gone to the shower, leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. It buzzed with a bank notification. Curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I was just checking, making sure everything was okay. But what I saw made my stomach twist into knots. Withdrawals, large sums, month after month, money vanishing from the college fund I had trusted would be my future. I froze, staring at the screen. At first, I couldn't process it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the bank made an error. I stared at the numbers, hoping they would somehow rearrange themselves into something normal, something reassuring. But there it was, plain as day. The money wasn't going to me. It wasn't even staying in an account where I could access it one day. It was being funneled to someone else entirely. Her new husband's children, private school tuition, expensive extracurriculars, summer vacations. My college fund, the money that was supposed to secure my future, was disappearing to support a family I didn't even belong to. I felt my chest tighten, a burning mix of anger and disbelief taking over. How could she do this? How could she choose them over me? I had trusted her, believed in her, held on to her promises like a lifeline, and she was using my future to give someone else a better present. It wasn't just money. It was the betrayal of everything I had hoped for, everything I had worked for, everything I thought our relationship meant. For a long time, I just sat there, frozen, my mind spinning with questions. I wanted to confront her immediately, to scream, to demand answers. But a part of me hesitated. I didn't know if I could bear the sight of her looking me in the eyes and admitting what she had done. The thought of losing her love, of seeing that my trust had been so completely violated, made my hands shake. When she finally came out of the shower, I could barely look at her. My voice cracked as I asked, "Mom, what is this?" She looked at me, calm, almost indifferent. And that's when the full weight of her betrayal hit me. She didn't deny it. she didn't stumble over excuses or mutter a half-hearted apology. She just looked me in the eye and said, "They need it more than you do." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my knees go weak, my hands tremble. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the money, it was the message behind it. She had chosen someone else's children over me, her own flesh and blood. She had decided in that quiet, calculated way that mothers are supposed to nurture and protect their own, that my future was less important than giving them a better life. For a long time, I just sat there, trying to make sense of it. I replayed every conversation we ever had about college, every promise she had made. Had it all been a lie? Had she really been planning to use my future as a bank account for someone else all along? The anger simmered under my skin, turning into a fire I couldn't extinguish. And yet, there was a heartbreaking layer of sadness, too, because part of me still wanted to believe in her, to convince myself that there was a reason, some twisted sense of justice or necessity that I couldn't see. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to my room, my mind racing with betrayal and confusion. Every plan I had for college felt like it had been stolen from me. The excitement, the hope, the dreams I had nurtured for years, they all seemed like a cruel joke. I stared at the ceiling, tears burning in my eyes, feeling a mixture of rage and helplessness that I had never experienced before. How could the person I trusted most, the one who promised to protect me, betray me so completely? And that's when I realized something else. This wasn't just about the money. It was about trust. It was about love. It was about realizing that someone who should have been my biggest supporter had decided I was less important than someone else. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial loss could ever be. It shattered the foundation of everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and what it meant to be cared for. By the time dawn broke, I had made a decision. I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't pretend it didn't happen. I needed answers. I needed accountability. And most of all, I needed to decide what my next steps would be, how I could protect myself, my future, and maybe even salvage some sense of trust in a family that had just betrayed me in the deepest possible way. The morning after discovering what my mom had done, I couldn't focus on anything else. Every thought revolved around those bank notifications, the withdrawals, and the betrayal that weighed like a heavy stone in my chest. I kept replaying her words. "They needed more than you do?" And with every replay, the anger grew hotter. How could she think it was okay to sacrifice my future for her new family? How could she sit there calmly while the dreams she had promised me were slipping away? I tried to talk to her again that morning. I approached her in the kitchen, my hands trembling, my heart racing with a mix of fear and fury. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking, "I need you to explain this. How could you take my college fund and give it to them? How could you do this to me?" She looked at me, her expression unreadable. For a brief moment, I thought she might show regret, remorse, or even shame. But no. She simply said, "I'm doing what I think is right. You'll understand one day." I froze, unable to respond. Understand? Understand that my future was being stolen from me? Understand that the person I trusted most in the world had chosen someone else over me? No, I couldn't understand, and I didn't want to. And yet, as much as I wanted to scream and run away, a part of me still wanted answers. I needed to know why. So I did what I hadn't done before. I started looking deeper. I went through receipts, emails, and bank statements. I traced every transaction. It was all there. Tuition payments, payments for after-school programs, vacations, even a little bike for one of her new husband's kids. Every cent of my college fund had been redirected to them. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a temporary loan. It was deliberate, intentional, and unrepentant. As I dug, the reality sunk in. My dreams, the ones I had nurtured for years, were now being held hostage by a decision I hadn't agreed to. College applications I'd been excited to fill out, scholarship opportunities I'd researched, the plans I had made for dorm life, study groups, and even my future career, they were all suddenly uncertain. I felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared.
I confronted her again that afternoon, this time more forcefully. Mom, this isn't fair. You promised me this money. You said you'd make sure I never had to worry about college. You lied. Why did you choose them over me? Her response was calm, almost dismissive. They need it more. You'll manage. You're smart. You'll find a way. That's when the full depth of my betrayal hit me. She wasn't just taking my money. She was belittling me, making it clear that she didn't think I was worthy of her support. She had decided that her new family's needs outweighed my dreams, my hard work, and my trust. It was cruel, but it was also a message. In her eyes, I was no longer a priority. I felt tears welling up, blurring my vision. I wanted to run away, to escape the suffocating weight of disappointment and hurt. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her until she understood the damage she had done. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. I needed a plan, a way to protect myself, and perhaps, if possible, a way to hold her accountable. Over the next few days, I began gathering evidence. I made copies of bank statements, receipts, and notifications. I documented every withdrawal, every transaction, every instance where my college fund had been diverted. It wasn't just money anymore, it was about principle. It was about proving that I had been wronged, that the person I trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The more I documented, the more I realized just how calculated it had been. This wasn't a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment, or temporary oversight. This was a deliberate decision made over months, maybe even years. Every deposit she made to the new family's accounts was a deposit stolen from my future. Every time she reassured me that my college fund was safe, she was lying. And now, at the age of 18, I was left to pick up the pieces. I started thinking about my options. I could confront her publicly, involve other family members, or even take legal action. But I also knew that no matter what I did, the emotional betrayal wouldn't disappear. The trust I had in my mom, the belief that she had my best interests at heart, had been shattered. Rebuilding that trust, or even deciding if I wanted to, would take years, maybe decades. Meanwhile, I had to face the reality that my dreams of going to college might not come true unless I acted quickly. I began researching scholarships, financial aid, and part-time jobs. I made lists, calculated budgets, and tried to figure out how I could cover tuition without the fund I had relied on. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and heartbreaking, but it also ignited a new determination inside me. I realized something important in those days. I couldn't rely on anyone else to secure my future. Not my mom, not family, not even well-meaning adults who promised support. I had to take control, to fight for myself, to make my dreams a reality no matter the obstacles that were in my way. And while it hurt to know that my own mother had chosen someone else's children over me, that betrayal became a fuel, a fire that pushed me to work harder, think smarter, and plan more carefully than I ever had before.
One evening, I decided to confront her one last time. I sat her down and said, "Mom, I know why you did this. You wanted to help your new family, and I understand that. But you should have told me. You should have included me in the decision. You should have respected my future." She looked at me with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "I did what I thought was best," she said. "You'll understand when you're older." I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. "No, I don't think I ever will, and that's okay. But I want you to know something. You may have taken my money, but you will not take my future. I will find a way. I will make my dreams happen, even if you don't support me." Her eyes flickered, and for a moment I thought I saw regret, but it was fleeting, gone as quickly as it appeared. I realized then that no amount of talking would change what she had done. All I could do was move forward, armed with determination and resilience. That night, I made a plan. I applied for every scholarship I could find, reached out to mentors, and started looking for part-time work that could help cover tuition. I knew it wouldn't be easy, far from it, but the fire inside me, the same fire that had been stoked by betrayal and disappointment, burned brighter than ever. By the time the week was over, I felt a strange mixture of heartbreak, anger, and empowerment.
My mother had betrayed me, yes, but I realized that her actions didn't have to define me. I could choose how to respond. I could choose to let this setback destroy me, or I could choose to rise above it, and I chose to rise. The days that followed were some of the most emotionally exhausting I had ever experienced. Every interaction with my mom was charged with tension. Every look she gave me felt like a reminder of the betrayal. I couldn't escape it. Even simple things like walking past her in the kitchen or hearing her voice from the living room made my chest tighten. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that wallowing in anger and hurt wouldn't solve anything. I needed a plan. I needed to take control of the situation. I started by thinking about my options. I could try to confront her again, but after our previous conversations, I knew words alone wouldn't change her. She had made her choice, and she wasn't going to apologize sincerely or reverse it. Legal action? Possibly. There were ways to recover funds that had been misappropriated, but that path was messy, complicated, and emotionally draining. And while I considered it, I knew that ultimately I wanted something more than money. I wanted my future back, my independence, my ability to control my own life. So I decided to focus on myself. I began researching every possible scholarship I could apply for, every financial aid option, every program that might help me pay for college. I spent hours each night filling out applications, writing essays, and tracking deadlines. My part-time job hours doubled, sometimes leaving me exhausted and sleep-deprived. But every dollar I earned, every form I submitted became a small victory over the situation my mom had created. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, frustrated by the unfairness of it all. I had trusted the person I should have been able to trust the most, and that trust had been shattered. I felt angry, betrayed, and heartbroken all at once. But at the same time, I felt a determination I had never known before. This betrayal, this attempt to take my future away from me, became fuel. I refused to let it define me or limit me. One afternoon, I overheard my mom talking to her new husband on the phone. I could hear the excitement in her voice as she discussed plans for the kids, trips they were going to take, and purchases she was planning. Every word was a sharp reminder of what had been taken from me. But instead of letting it crush me, I used it as motivation. I reminded myself that her priorities didn't have to become mine, that her choices didn't dictate my future. I also began talking to people outside the house, mentors, family friends, even my school counselor. I explained the situation carefully without revealing too much personal detail, but enough to get support and advice. People were shocked, some even angry on my behalf. But most importantly, they offered practical guidance. They helped me find hidden scholarships, suggested part-time job opportunities, and even connected me with organizations that could assist students in need. I realized then that while my mom had tried to take control of my future, I still had allies, and I wasn't alone. The confrontation I had been avoiding finally happened, but it wasn't the emotional showdown I had imagined. One evening, I sat down with her, documents in hand, and calmly laid out everything I had discovered. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I presented the evidence, the bank statements, the withdrawals, the calculations showing exactly how much of my college fund had been redirected. I wanted her to see the impact of her actions, not through words of anger, but through undeniable facts. Her reaction surprised me. At first, she looked startled, almost defiant, but as I spoke, I could see something shift in her expression. There was a flicker of guilt, maybe even fear, but it was fleeting, gone as quickly as it appeared. I realized then that no amount of talking would change what she had done. "I did what I thought was best," she said again. "You'll understand when you're older." I looked at her in the eyes and said, "You made a choice, and that's your right. But I need you to understand that your choice has consequences. You can't erase what you did. You can't undo the trust you broke." She was quiet after that, no words left to defend herself. And in that silence, I felt a strange sense of power. Not power over her, but power over myself. I realized that while she could try to take my money, my dreams, and my trust, she couldn't take my resolve. She couldn't control my actions, my ambition, or the future I was determined to build. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I spent every spare moment focused on college applications, scholarship essays, and work. I even took on extra shifts at my job, sometimes working double hours just to ensure I could cover tuition costs. It was exhausting, and there were moments when I wanted to give up, moments when I thought about how unfair life was. But every time I felt myself faltering, I reminded myself of the stakes. This was my future. No one else could decide it for me. During this time, I also started to reflect on my relationship with my mom in a new light. I realized that while I had been hurt, I couldn't change the past. I couldn't force her to make better decisions or to act differently. What I could do, however, was set boundaries. I could decide how much I allowed her influence in my life, how much control I gave her over my dreams. I began to understand that forgiveness wasn't about excusing her actions. It was about reclaiming my own power. One afternoon, while working on a scholarship essay, I paused and thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lost money, the broken trust. It had all led me to this point, sitting alone with my thoughts, my ambition, and my determination. I realized that while I had been a victim of circumstance, I didn't have to remain one. I could turn this pain into strength, this betrayal into motivation.
I also began to notice subtle changes in myself. I was more cautious, yes, but I was also stronger, more resilient. I had learned to stand up for myself, to advocate for my own needs, and to fight for what I deserved. Every step I took toward securing my college future was a step toward reclaiming the life that had been threatened by someone else's choices. And then came the moment of clarity. I realized that while my mom had betrayed me, I didn't have to let her actions define me. I could still achieve everything I had dreamed of, even if it meant doing it without her support. Her decisions had forced me to grow up faster, to take responsibility for my own future, and to rely on my own strength and determination. In a strange way, her betrayal had given me the tools I needed to succeed. By the end of part 3, I had fully committed to my plan. I wasn't just surviving, I was strategizing, preparing, and taking action. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that I had the strength to walk it. The fire of betrayal had ignited a resilience I hadn't known I possessed, and I was determined to see it through. The weeks turned into months, and every day I spent working toward my college dream felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I had transformed the anger, disappointment, and heartbreak into a force that propelled me forward. I applied to every scholarship I could find, took on extra shifts at work, and even sought guidance from teachers and mentors who believed in me. Each small victory, a returned call, and accepted application, a grant of partial tuition, felt like a personal triumph, a sign that I wasn't defeated by betrayal. But even as I focused on my future, the shadow of my mother's actions lingered. It was impossible to forget that the person who should have supported me, nurtured me, and protected my dreams had instead chosen someone else's family over her own child. That reality hurt, gnawed at me, and sometimes threatened to break the fragile balance I had built in my life. Every time I saw her, I felt a mix of anger, disappointment, and a strange sorrow for the person I had once trusted completely. One evening, I decided it was time for one final confrontation, not out of hope that she would apologize or change, but to assert myself and set boundaries. I sat her down, documents in hand, just as I had months ago, and spoke calmly, clearly, and firmly. Mom, I've made my decision. I'm moving forward with my life, with or without your support.
But I need you to understand something. The trust you broke isn't easily repaired. You chose your new family over me. That's not something I can just forget." She looked at me, her eyes wide for a moment, then softened. There was a flicker of recognition, perhaps even guilt, but it was fleeting. She didn't speak. She didn't try to defend herself. For the first time, I realized that maybe words weren't enough. Maybe she would never fully understand the depth of her betrayal, and that was okay. I didn't need her validation or approval anymore. With that, I made a silent vow to myself. I would succeed, I would thrive, and I would create a future she couldn't take away, no matter how hard she tried. That night, I went to bed with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, I felt truly empowered. The following months were a whirlwind of activity. I worked long hours, attended night classes, and navigated the labyrinth of college applications and financial aid. Some days were exhausting, and I questioned whether I could handle the pressure. But every time I felt myself faltering, I remembered the betrayal that had ignited this fire within me. I remembered the college fund that had been stolen, the dreams that had been jeopardized, and the trust that had been broken. And I pushed forward, one step at a time. Along the way, I discovered a resilience I hadn't known existed. I learned to advocate for myself, to negotiate scholarships, to seek opportunities where none seemed to exist. I made connections with professors and mentors who saw my determination and offered guidance, encouragement, and support. Slowly but surely, I began to feel that my future was once again within my grasp. And then, the day came when I received my acceptance letter from the university I had dreamed of attending. I held the envelope in my hands, my heart pounding, tears streaming down my face. All the late nights, all the hard work, all the emotional turmoil had led to this moment. I had done it. I had reclaimed my future. I didn't run to my mom to show her the letter. I didn't feel the need for her approval or acknowledgement. This victory was mine. She had taken my money, my trust, and my sense of security, but she could not take this. This achievement, this proof of my resilience, was untouchable. As I prepared to leave for college, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal was devastating, but it also taught me invaluable lessons. I had learned to trust my instincts, to rely on myself, and to fight for what I deserved. I had discovered strength in adversity and realized that while some people may fail you, you can still rise above. I also realized the importance of boundaries. My relationship with my mom would never be the same, and I accepted that. I could maintain civility, even kindness, but I could no longer allow her choices to dictate my life. I had to protect my own dreams and ensure that nothing, not even a betrayal by the person I loved most, could derail me again. When I finally stepped on campus, carrying my suitcase and my dreams, I felt a sense of liberation I had never known. Every challenge I had faced, the stolen college fund, the endless obstacles, the emotional weight of betrayal, had prepared me for this moment. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. And as I looked forward to the life I would build, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I had taken what was meant to be my setback and turned it into a launch pad for success. Over time, I also learned to forgive, not for my mom, but for myself. Forgiving didn't mean forgetting or excusing what she had done. It meant releasing the hold that anger and resentment had over me, allowing me to focus on the future rather than being trapped in the past. Every scholarship I earned, every class I completed, every milestone I achieved was a testament to my perseverance and my ability to rise above betrayal. Years later, as I graduated with honors, I reflected on my journey. I had faced the ultimate test of trust, love, and resilience. My mom had taken what I thought was guaranteed, but I had fought to reclaim my dreams. And in the end, I realized that the true measure of strength isn't in what others do to you. It's in how you respond, how you persevere, and how you refuse to let betrayal define your destiny. Looking back, I don't dwell on the money she took or the choices she made. I focus on what I accomplished despite it. I focus on the independence I gained, the skills I developed, and the confidence I built. And I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that no one, not even the person you trust most, can ever take away your future if you fight for it. The journey was painful, and it left scars that will always remain, but it also gave me a profound understanding of my own strength. I had been betrayed, yes, but I had also discovered resilience, determination, and an unwavering belief in myself. And that, more than anything else, is what carried me forward, shaping the life I had always dreamed of, even when the person I loved most had tried to steal it away.